Genesis chapter 2 is a retelling of some of the events that occurred in Genesis chapter 1 and the creation of the world. These two chapters are really a springboard for the rest of the story of the Bible. And contained within that larger story are many smaller stories that we've come to be familiar with and love. Stories about Noah and the ark, Abraham, Joseph in Egypt, Moses, Samuel and the judges, David and King Solomon, Jonah and the whale, and in the New Testament and the Gospels, John the Baptist and Jesus, and the apostles and the disciples in the book of Acts as they went and spread the message of the kingdom of God throughout the world. But as we read through those stories and we talk about them in our Bible classes and tell them to our children, when we get to the final pages in the book of Revelation and we close that book, sometimes there's a temptation to think that the story is over, that this was a story that God began thousands of years ago and concluded thousands of years ago, and that the characters in this story are very special and that they're nothing like me, and their life doesn't tie in with my life, and that I'm not doing the same things that they were doing. But I think to read the Bible that way is actually to misunderstand what God intended for us to understand, and that is that the story is not over. What's written down for us in the scriptures is really just the first half of the story. God is still at work in the world, using his servants, working with them and through him to do the same things that needed to be done when Revelation closed. The kingdom of God still needs to be advanced. People still need to hear about Jesus. There's sick and poor and orphans and widows and less fortunate that need to be cared for. Missionary journeys still need to happen. And whose time is it to complete those works? It's no longer the highlighted, featured characters of the New Testament, the Paul and Peter, John, James. They've lived their lives and they've gone on to be with the Lord. Who's alive now to contribute to the story, to write the story? Well, quite obviously, it's us. It's now our opportunity and privilege to be a part of the story that God's been writing from the very beginning of time. And there's no reason to think that God can't use us as incredibly as he used some of the characters that we've become so familiar with and that we love from the old Bible stories. When we see our lives in this way, it helps us to frame them in a bigger perspective. It's bigger than just ourselves. It's bigger than just our personal faith. It's bigger than even the faith communities, the local churches that we are a part of. Seeing our lives in this light will help us to make them count. Help us to realize our place and our purpose and our value, because God ascribes us value in the greatest story that has ever been told, that began all the way back in Genesis chapter 2, and that will conclude, well, never.